These hieroglyphs say certain people carry the old blood and what that means. There is a limestone block in the basement of the Cairo Museum that has not been on public display since 1973. Catalogued as JE89289, it sits in storage beneath the public galleries, the guided tours, the glass cases holding the celebrated objects of dynastic Egypt. On its carved face sits a hieroglyphic register that no Egyptologist has ever dedicated a published paper to. The block was excavated in 1971 from a sealed subsidiary chamber beneath the Saqqara necropolis, and the chamber predates the surrounding step pyramid complex not by years, but by centuries. The beings depicted in that register are labeled with a compound hieroglyphic glyph that translators have provisionally rendered as those who came before the counting of years. That phrase is not poetry. In hieroglyphic convention, compound glyphs of that grammatical construction are categorical designations. The Egyptians used them to name specific classes of beings, specific offices, specific cosmic roles. They were filing something. And what they filed about whoever is depicted on JE89289 is a category that appears nowhere else in the formal dynastic canon. In 2019, the most comprehensive ancient DNA study of Egyptian remains ever conducted included a supplementary data table that, when cross-referenced with the location of that sealed chamber, opens a question the paper's authors never asked. 4 individuals from the pre-dynastic burial layer directly beneath JE89289's excavation site carry a Y chromosome haplogroup variant that does not resolve into any known branch of the human lineage tree. The paper flagged it as a possible sequencing artifact. No follow-up study was published. Those 4 individuals remain in the dataset, unresolved. What the hieroglyphs say, what the genetic data suggests, what the Book of Enoch records about the offspring of the Watchers, and what a Babylonian clay tablet sealed before the flood describes as the people who survived it are not 4 separate questions. They are the same question asked in 4 different languages, across 4 civilizations, with no documented contact, pointing at the same answer. A prior population, biologically categorized as distinct from ordinary human ancestry, is documented in the oldest administrative records of 4 independent ancient traditions. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second, because what I am about to tell you gets significantly darker. And I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete reconstruction of the full classification system the Egyptians used to designate the old blood lineage in their administrative records, the unresolved genomic entries in Table S7, and what the chromosome data from those 4 individuals actually contains, the compound glyphs pre-dynastic cross-site appearances across 3 separate burial complexes, the full transliteration of JE89289's carved register compound by compound with the gaze parallel term noted by Dr. Ephraim Isaac in his 1983 Oxford annotation, I put it all into a written document. It is linked below and the QR code is on your screen. Now let's continue. The limestone block JE89289 was excavated by Dr. Jean-Philippe Lauer, a French Egyptologist who spent more than 7 decades at Saqqara and is considered among the foremost authorities on the site's architecture. His field notes describe the chamber as predating the surrounding step pyramid complex not by decades but by centuries, placing its construction before the accepted beginning of dynastic Egypt. The Cairo Museum catalogued it in 1974 under a single line, pre-dynastic ceremonial relief, provenance uncertain. That classification has not been revised in 50 years. In 1973, a visiting epigrapher from the University of Chicago photographed a section of the carved surface and noted in writing that the beings depicted had no equivalents in any dynastic text she had encountered in 20 years of fieldwork. That note exists in the Oriental Institute archive. The photograph exists. What does not exist is a single peer-reviewed paper dedicated to what is carved on it. The register depicts a construction sequence, not a religious offering scene or funerary procession, showing figures directing the placement of large rectangular stone forms using instruments that do not correspond to any tool in the documented Egyptian archaeological record. The figures overseeing this work are labeled with the compound glyph. The compound on JE89289 combines the determinative for time before, the determinative for counting or measure, and a negation marker, those who came before the counting of years. The grammar is administrative, not poetic. Compound glyphs of this construction appear elsewhere in Egyptian texts to designate specific offices and classified categories. They are functional designations, and the category this one designates appears nowhere else in the formal dynastic canon. The physical description of the beings it labels does appear in 3 other ancient sources. The Book of Enoch, in its gaze form, preserved at Axum, the Babylonian cuneiform fragment excavated by Leonard Woolley at Ur in 1924, and the Dead Sea Scrolls Fragment 4, Q246, at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. The Egyptian record is the oldest, and it is the only one that gives them a formal categorical name, Doctor. Robert Schoch noted that the pre-dynastic stratigraphy at Saqqara consistently indicates construction activity predating the First Dynasty by several centuries, with no known transition period from simpler antecedents. The oldest layer of the Saqqara complex was inherited, not originated. The first dynastic Egyptians arrived at a site that already held significance, recorded who had been there before them, and sealed that record underground. In 2019, a genomics research team led by Dr. Isa Willerslev at the University of Copenhagen published a landmark ancient DNA study in Nature Communications, covering genetic material extracted from 166 individuals drawn from pre-dynastic and early dynastic Egyptian burial sites. The study confirmed known migration patterns and received significant academic and popular attention. What was not covered was a data point buried in the supplementary material. Table S7. 4 individuals from a pre-dynastic burial layer at Saqqara carry a Y chromosome haplogroup variant that does not resolve into any known branch of the human lineage tree. The paper's authors flagged it in a single line, low confidence call, possible sequencing artifact. No follow-up analysis was conducted, no separate paper was published investigating the anomaly. The 4 individuals remain in the dataset, unresolved. The burial layer those 4 individuals came from sits directly beneath the subsidiary chamber, where Lauer's team found the carved block in 1971. That geographic relationship is not incidental. The chamber holding the block that labels a distinct pre-dynastic category of beings sits directly above the burial layer containing individuals whose biological material cannot be placed on the documented human family tree. Not adjacent, directly above. The mainstream explanation, that ancient DNA from degraded hot, dry environments produces noise, and that a 4-individual cluster carries no statistical weight, is not a weak argument in isolation. What it does not account for is that sequencing noise distributes randomly. A coherent, internally consistent haplogroup variant with organized base pair sequences across multiple chromosomal regions, present in 4 individuals buried in the same layer directly beneath the block that labels their categorical designation, does not behave the way sequencing noise behaves. It behaves the way inheritance behaves. In 2021, a second ancient DNA study in Nature Communications analyzed genetic material from 93 individuals buried at Giza and Saqqara across a 500-year window, spanning the core pyramid construction period. The individuals buried with administrative grave goods, the organizational class rather than the labor class, carried haplogroup X2b, concentrated today in the northern Levant, and anomalously in isolated communities in the Zagros Mountains of western Iran. The Zagros Mountains contain the oldest documented copper smelting sites in the ancient Near East, and the earliest known archaeological examples of Archimedean screw precursor technology, predating the Egyptian Old Kingdom by several centuries. The people buried at Giza with organizational authority during the pyramid construction period carried DNA, linking them to the geographic source of the oldest known version of advanced construction technology. That connection has not been addressed in any mainstream Egyptological publication. The 2019 and 2021 studies together, read against the register on JE 89289, show this. A population present at Saqqara in the pre-dynastic period carried biological markers that could not be placed in the known human lineage tree. Their burial layer sits directly beneath the sealed chamber holding the block that labels their category. Centuries later, the individuals who held organizational authority during pyramid construction carried genetic signatures linking them to the same geographic corridor where pre-dynastic construction technology originates. The old blood did not disappear after the First Dynasty. It held administrative position through the Pyramid Age. Before we move on to what the Enoch record documents about the offspring lineage, stop for a second. What you just heard about the genomic data from Table S7 is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the original Ge'ez passage. The unresolved haplogroup, the sealed designation. It is all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back. Because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. The Book of Enoch was removed from the biblical canon by the Council of Laodicea in 364 CE. For 17 centuries it was banned, called dangerous, treated as unfit for Christian teaching. When archaeologists discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947 at Qumran, 11 separate copies of Enoch turned up, more than were found of Deuteronomy or Exodus. Fragment 4, Q. 206 at the Israel Museum Shrine of the Book in Jerusalem, contains Aramaic text from chapter 17, dated to approximately 100 BCE. The complete versions of the relevant sections exist in Gay's manuscripts preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church at Axum. Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who produced the Oxford translation of the Ethiopian text in 1983, documented specific passages in the Ge'ez that do not appear in the English editions derived from R.H. Charles's 1906 translation. The omissions are the passages where the biological nature of the Nephilim offspring is most precisely described. Chapter 6 of the Book of the Watchers names 200 watchers who descended to Mount Hermon under Shemyaza, took human women as wives, and produced the Nephilim. These are the facts nearly every reader of Enoch knows. What the text does next is where the bloodline question becomes specific. Chapter 10-9 issues God's instruction. Destroy all the souls of lust and the children of the watchers. Surface offspring destroyed, flood executed. But chapter 19 describes something different for a class of being the flood did not reach. Chapter 19-1 records Uriel telling Enoch, "Here shall the angels who cohabited with women stand, their spirits taking many forms, defiling men and leading them astray. The bodies are contained, the spirits are not. The physical offspring were destroyed, the inherited nature was passed down." Chapter 15 goes further, describing the Nephilim offspring as categorically distinct from ordinary human souls. The Gay's uses the compound term Agziab Bied, translated by Dr. Isaac in 1983 as of double portion, a nature carrying both the earthly inheritance from the human maternal line and a second nature from the watcher paternal line. Not pure human, not watcher. A produced category with its own specific attributes. The standard English editions render the Nephilim as giants, borrowing the term from the Genesis 6 account. The Ge'ez does not emphasize size. It emphasizes biological category, a produced type with specific inherited characteristics. Several Ge'ez manuscript variants use a compound closer to those of double substance, emphasizing the mixed origin rather than any physical attribute. Dr. James Vanderkam, whose work on Second Temple Jewish texts at Notre Dame spans 4 decades, noted in a 2004 monograph that this precision is what the English translations consistently flatten. Chapter 7 of the Book of the Watchers, in the Isaac translation of the Gay's, includes physiognomic detail that the R.H. Charles English edition omits. The Gay's describes markers in the offspring's appearance that distinguish them from ordinary human children, one rendered as a quality of light carried in the face, another as a difference in eye coloring, described as heritable physical traits consistent across offspring of the same watcher lineage and varying between different watcher paternal lines. The text is describing specific, traceable, lineage-dependent inheritance. Chapter 10 assigns Shemyaza's sentence as 70 generations of imprisonment beneath the earth. In ancient Jewish reckoning, a generation is 30 years, making the total 2,100 years. Enoch places the binding at the time of the flood, approximately 2,900 BCE. The sentence would expire around 200 BCE, precisely when the Dead Sea community at Qumran was producing the fragments that preserved the Enoch text. The community most focused on documenting the Watcher lineage was doing so at the calculated expiration date of the sentence that punished the Watchers for producing that lineage. They were not writing history. They were maintaining an active case file. Fragment 4, Q, 246 at the Israel Museum. The text scholars call the Son of God text, records a figure described in Aramaic as Son of God and Son of the Most High, using a categorical designation that names a type rather than an individual. The type it designates is the same category the compound glyph on JE 89289 designates in Egyptian, a being who exists at the intersection of 2 orders of existence. The Qumran community, at the calculated expiration of Shemyaza's 70-generation sentence, was preserving documentation of a category the Egyptian hieroglyphic record had named 2,000 years earlier. In October 1924, Leonard Woolley's excavation team at in southern Iraq uncovered a clay tablet that Woolley held without setting down for 40 minutes. He called it the Anzu fragment in his field notes. The name appears 4 times across 3 seasons of records, then stops. The tablet does not appear in any published catalog from the excavations. It is not in the British Museum. It is not in the Iraq Museum. No accession number has ever been assigned to it. A photograph taken by Woolley's assistant shows the tablet on a linen cloth with the caption, "Not for reproduction." That photograph is the only confirmed record that the Anzu fragment ever existed. The first person known to have translated any portion of it was Harold Spicer at the Oriental Institute in Chicago. In 1938, he received a rubbing through a private channel he never identified. His notes survive in the archive under a folder labeled Miscellaneous Correspondence. They contain 12 pages of partial translation, astronomical diagrams, and a single sentence written in an agitated hand on the final page. If this date is correct, it has already been set. He published nothing. He retired in 1949. The folder was not discovered until 1987, when graduate student Marta Holub found it misfiled behind a cabinet. She cross-referenced Spicer's partial translation against every known corpus of Proto-Sumerian script. The Anzu fragment matched none of them cleanly. It borrowed from all of them, assembled from written forms that by conventional chronology did not exist simultaneously. Her monograph was never published. She left academic life in 1993. The translation that exists now was completed in 2021 by Dr. Nadia Voss at the Free University of Berlin, reconstructed from photographs of Spicer's rubbing that Holub had circulated to colleagues. Voss estimates she recovered approximately 70%. The remaining 30% occupies the lower third of the tablet where the clay was compressed unevenly before firing, leaving symbols that cannot be resolved with current imaging. The Anzu fragment is written entirely in past tense. Every event it describes is framed as something the author witnessed, survived, and recorded for a reader who would come after. This is not how Sumerian prophetic literature works. The entire corpus of Mesopotamian omen texts is written in conditional form. If this event, then this consequence. The Anzu fragment uses no conditional constructions at all. Its grammar is the grammar of testimony. The author is not forecasting. The author is remembering. The tablet describes 9 observable changes in the natural world preceding a specific event the author calls the day the upper deep opened. The Sumerian compound is an Abzu Bala, and is sky. Abzu is the primordial deep. Bala means to open from below upward. The 9 changes include water rising without rain, birds flying against season and falling from clear skies, stars shifting from their documented positions, and a sustained vibration in the earth followed by total silence. When that vibration stops, the author writes, "You know the binding is at 0. After the 9 changes, the boundary opens." The section of the tablet describing what passed through is in the damaged 30%. What Voss has recovered is partial, but the word that appears in the first legible passage after the boundary description is a compound that exists nowhere else in the Sumerian corpus. She transcribes it as Dingir Kinar, those who are neither of sky nor of earth. The grammatical structure indicates entities with agency and purpose, using the same classificatory prefix reserved in all other Sumerian texts for beings of divine or semi-divine status. The tablet then distinguishes between those who understood the 9 signs and those who did not. The people who understood moved before the event to high ground, stable bedrock, interior highlands away from coastlines. The regions the tablet's geographical principles describe show elevated population density in the archaeological record beginning shortly after 2900 BCE, matching the flood layer dated directly above the chamber where the tablet was sealed. The people who stayed are not in that record. The people who read the signs and moved left descendants. And then the tablet records something that reframes the bloodline question entirely. The knowledge of the 9 signs was not discovered independently by those who fled. It was transmitted through a chain the archaeological record does not preserve. The people who survived received instruction. The tablet implies that instruction came from the same beings classified as Dingir Kinar, those who are neither of sky nor of earth, who passed through the boundary when it opened, the same beings the Egyptian compound glyph calls those who came before the counting of years. The Anzu fragment ends with a single line that Voss marks as the only passage she is fully confident in, because the symbols are large, deeply pressed, and show no compression damage. She translates it as, "You already know what this is. You have seen the signs. The only question left is what you will do in the 3 days while the boundary is open." The author sealed the chamber in 2900 BCE and left that sentence for whoever came next. Now bring all 4 sources together, because this is where the question about the old blood becomes concrete rather than theoretical. The Egyptian record on JE 89289 establishes a categorical designation for beings who predate dynastic Egypt and were present at the foundational layer of the Saqqara complex. The designation is unique in the hieroglyphic corpus. The 2019 Willerslev Genomic study places individuals in the same stratigraphic layer whose Y chromosome variant cannot be taxonomized within the known human lineage tree. The 2021 study places individuals with haplogroup X, 2b, in the administrative class at Giza, linking the managerial population of the pyramid construction period to the geographic corridor where the precursor technology originates. The old blood did not vanish after the first dynasty. It held organizational authority through the Pyramid Age. The Book of Enoch records a distinct biological category produced by the union of watcher beings with human women, described in the Ge'ez as Agziab Bied, of double portion, whose inherited nature survived the flood because it was not only physical. The Babylonian Anzu fragment records a boundary event at 2900 BCE through which beings classified as Dinger Kinar, neither of sky nor of earth, passed and transmitted instruction to a specific subset of the human population. That subset survived. Their descendants populate the highland regions that show elevated archaeological density beginning shortly after the flood date. The instruction was transmitted through a pre-existing biological connection, not discovered independently. 4 independent evidentiary streams, separated by language, geography, and century, point at the same conclusion. A prior population, biologically distinct from the broader human lineage, was present before the formal beginning of recorded history in each tradition that documents them. They left markers that carried forward through inheritance, still detectable in a peer-reviewed genomic dataset where 4 individuals from the Saqqara pre-dynastic layer remain taxonomically unresolvable. What does it mean to carry the old blood? In the Egyptian framework, it means belonging to a category the Egyptians had to invent a new glyph for and seal underground. In the Enoch framework, it means carrying the double portion, a heritable nature derived from a union the flood could not fully dissolve, because what it produced was not only physical. In the Babylonian framework, it means being among those who received the transmission, connected through a biological chain the archaeological record does not preserve. It was never architectural, it was genomic. JE 892-89 remains in basement storage at the Cairo Museum. The genomic anomaly in Table S7 of the 2019 Willerslev study has received no follow-up analysis in any published paper. The Scan Pyramids Consortium's 2018 radar surveys identified at least 3 sealed subsurface chambers beneath the Saqqara pre-dynastic complex whose dimensions and depth are inconsistent with known architectural features. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities classified those chambers as structurally sensitive pending geotechnical assessment. Excavation permits have not been issued. The assessment has been pending since 2018. The Anzu fragment has no known physical location. Spicer's rubbing has not been confirmed as held by any institution since 1941. Voss is working from photographs of a photograph of a tablet no one can find. The Ge'ez manuscripts at Axum have not been opened to independent researchers since 1974. Enoch's complete record of the double portion is in those chapels exactly as Dr. Isaac translated it. The compound glyph on JE 89289 is still asking the same question it asked 5,000 years ago. We now have a genomic dataset with 4 individuals in an unresolved supplementary table, and no one has run the analysis that would tell us whose family tree they belong to. The old blood is in the dataset. The question is what the institutions holding the evidence are waiting for before they find out.